All right. Well, directly back from France, Spain, and London, we're happy to have you, Michelle, on the Leaders Who Care series. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having such a beautiful series. We need
Well,
more leaders who care.
we do, and that's why we're having you on, so you can, you can show your stuff and all the good things you're doing, and so on. So, best way to start, as always, is if you could briefly introduce yourself, but all the stuff you do. Tell us a little bit about who Michelle is, where you're from originally, family, if you want, things like that. Something you've never told anybody you want to tell now to the world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, yeah, so who am I? I'm Michelle Bernabe. I was born the third of four girls. To Michael and Dina, I like to talk about them. My mom is a social worker and my dad is a rocket scientist. And I think I am the fusion of those two. I've got my mom's heart and a little bit of my dad's brain. Not the full extent, but yeah, I was very lucky. I think, my dad's job, he worked for military and defense, um, contracting with them through Boeing, and it took us around a lot. So probably one aspect of my childhood I'm really grateful for is growing up in Hawaii on the island of Maui and just, yeah, getting to grow up on that land. I say like there are the people who raised us, and then there's the land that raised us. And I think the spirit in the island of Hawaii shapes a lot of who I am and how I think about things.
That's awesome. You
Yeah.
couldn't, your dad didn't want to give you any more of his mind? You just got a little bit?
Well, I mean, I guess.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't know you were, I can't remember. I didn't know if you were raised in Hawaii. That's pretty good. Did you surf? Did you do any of that?
I did. I surfed. I hiked. I played, yeah, soccer, and I was the smallest because there's a lot of like larger Polynesian Samoan girls, and I was just this tiny, pint-sized little howlie, as they called me.
But they couldn't catch you though, right?
Exactly. You can't beat what you can't catch. That's
Yeah.
a motto I know well.
I knew that same logo or motto in ice hockey. You got to catch me if you're going to hit me.
Awesome.
So, um, so we're talking about growing up. So tell us a little bit more about what you were like as a kid or a teenager. Were you the tomboyish, the girly girl? Were you playing doctor or nurse? Were you what? Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely was not playing nurse. Yeah, I was more of a tomboy. I think one time, when I did my first therapy intake, we we went through my whole childhood, and she wrote down that as a child I was into benign mischief, and I
Oh,
really like that categorization of myself. I was into benign mischief. Yeah,
so benign meaning not necessarily like hidden or just not all coming
like
out? Or,
a prankster, benign. It was like good mischief. Like,
oh, okay.
it wasn't malicious. It wasn't
Curious.
Yeah, it was just I was like a little prankster, like Eddie Haskell troublemaker. Um,
Yes.
but it was hard to get me in trouble because um I had a good heart.
And still do, I noticed.
Yeah.
So, do you have brothers, sisters?
Oh yeah, three sisters.
Wow. Four girls and your mom. Your dad had a full house.
My dad had a full house. He adopted many sons along the way. Although for his, I don't know, his 40th birthday, um, I did give him a port. I dressed in drag as a son and gave him a picture. It did it
I
did, quite hit the spirit I had hoped, but I did give
that is maybe one of the more unique answers and gifts I have heard.
Well, you
Um,
said to say something that I haven't told anyone before, so I
and I love
I
it
had to
actually.
make sure to pack in that punch.
Do you have that picture?
I do, I love that picture.
Oh, good. All right. Next time I want to see it. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's it's a side by side. There's one of me as, like, a middle schooler looking tomboyish, and then there's one of me dressing intentionally as a boy, so it's funny.
Love it. I can't wait to see that. So, early on, if you move on, you studied, human development economics, UCSD. You worked with the Clarity Foundation, I believe, from what I
Yeah.
saw. And at the same time, if you also became then a nurse through Columbia. Can you give us a sense of what you were envisioning throughout that time?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew I wanted to do good. I think I was, raised very Catholic and, had a very good experience with the Catholic faith. Um, like very special, like priests and nuns. I was very lucky, who really instilled a sense of social justice and yeah, I mean, I guess in Catholic social teaching, like a preferential option for the poor, that the closer into proximity we get to the poor, the better our lives are, in that exchange of teaching and learning. And so, was I envisioning a nurse? No, but I knew it was something to do with community and helping and healing.
Cool. And how did the whole human development economics fit into that?
Yeah, so it's technically just human development, no economics. How did it fit in? I think it was, this is kind of where socialization came to play. So we touched on that I had a little bit of my dad's brain, right? And I think maybe had I been a boy, I would have gone into maybe a more engineering thing. But it was, and I'm kind of, as I look back, I was like, I wish I would have just done that. But for whatever reason, I tracked into maybe a more feminine career. So I don't know that it was so thoughtful and intentional. I think it was just human development, nurturing, yeah, that little more feminine sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a little bit societal, probably where you're supposed to go
Exactly.
type of
Yeah,
thing, which
exactly.
is hopefully changing. It is changing,
It
not maybe
is.
to some degree, which
Yeah.
is good. Um, Now I can see it. And well, one thing with our firm, we were founded on the premise that leaders and organizations can always do better when they are doing good.
Mm,
Excuse me. And um, so it's clear that you are a believer and even an early leader in
mm,
that because you seem to always have that caring for the patient first.
yep.
And I know you're into collaboration and innovation to make an impact.
Yep.
You told me, I read it, whatever, on well-being, and you'd like to disrupt the healthcare industry also.
Yeah.
Of
That's
course,
right.
exactly. So can you describe what you learned, the relationships you developed, and taking on opportunities that you had, which were pretty diverse. You were in Psych ER.
Yeah.
You founded the old. I find this fascinating. You founded the
Oh,
oldest and
owner.
largest member.
I didn't find it. Found it. I'm an owner because it's a co-op,
Okay, you're an owner. So still, it was the largest member labor required grocery store.
and I love that place. Yeah.
And you were in brain health consulting on top of that. I
Yeah.
mean, what a combo. So what did you learn and what relationships did you develop to enhance your career and get to where you are now? And how did that all happen?
Yeah. I think it all happened by listening to my body.
Mm,
Um,
cool.
yeah, as a sense of like this feels good, this doesn't feel good, this is producing more anxiety. Again, I back to that it's so funny. I don't talk about religion in my day to day this much, but it is coming up in this podcast. I think because it really informed kind of who I am as a leader. But the Jesuit idea of examination of conscious, and in that, they have this ritual where you really just feel into your body. Like, is this provoking joy? Is your body feeling more open? Is your body feeling more closed? And I think on some level, um I was that's what led me to these different things, like the largest member owned food co-op, working food co-op, which is here in Brooklyn, the Park Slope Food Co-op. was it's just an amazing magical place where produce, especially New York City, where you have fresh produce that's cheap and it's beautiful, gorgeous produce. Like thinking about that produce aisle, my body gets happy, right? And we started this talking about Europe. You see those kind of like open produce markets more in Europe than you do in the US. So yeah, I think listening to my body, long story short, and really paying attention to it when I feel more joyful and open. And that's kind of what led me to these very disparate, but connected things.
Well, and, you're talking about what's a big topic right now in the world, if not certainly in the US, and um, where maybe we do need to listen to our body a little bit more, our heart, our mind, and why mental health is such a big issue. Our body's pretty smart
Yeah,
in
it
what
is.
it knows and does tell us, and a lot of
Yeah.
times we're so too busy to listen to it, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I had a friend has a private equity firm, and he uses this expression: we should take a step, then take a breath, and then be aware. And
Mm,
it kind of is, smell the roses. It's kind of all along the whole line of things. Um,
yeah.
and it sounds like you do take a breath and be aware as to what your body's telling you to do.
On the good days. Yeah. On
Days.
the good days.
On the other
Yeah.
days, you don't pay attention.
Exactly. Well, I think I can attribute, so you asked about kind of these cool things I've done. I can attribute my successes to doing that, right? And so my failures are when I've neglected or got confused in that process.
Did you learn from the failures though?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Still learning from the failures. So
Like
much.
what?
Oh, like what? I think, um, yeah, some of the failures have been in relationships, right? So we're raised in these imperfect families, and then we go into these businesses which are also imperfect families. And I don't think if you have, some kind of therapy or intervention or reflective process, you just repeat the same patterns as your family. So um yeah, I did, especially early in my career, without awareness, was doing some of that. And um yeah, I mean, thanks to growth and therapy and mentorship, uh, have gotten better. But I think, I always like to, one aspect of what I like to bring into leadership is owning the harm I've caused. Because I think, you know, social media, you brought up already, we like to save face and project these Instagram reels of perfection when being human is a lot messier. Um, yeah, so
Yeah, it's interesting. Because yeah, that is what happened, and it's funny. Being human is much more attractive, not perfect, than perfect. I have
I
found.
agree. Yeah,
You know, um,
yeah.
a model that looks perfect isn't necessarily happy in having to keep looking perfect, and is a lot
It's
of times happier not
That's
having
true.
to look perfect.
Mm,
And
yeah.
sometimes, a person is more attractive, not only physically, but in every other way when they're not perfect.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I love that.
because that is more human. So I totally get that. And, in the work we do with leaders, also, one thing I've found that used to be called soft skills, we call them high skills now, which is human intelligence skills. Uh,
Hmm,
that is not perfect. There's like you're vulnerable, you can be emotional, you don't have to
yeah,
pretend to know everything, you can trust
yeah,
people, and it becomes easier and actually more effective, whether it's in a business setting, a family setting, or even a sports setting on a team that trusts each other.
yeah.
Don't you think?
Oh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And
Like
I would add, I'm sure you said high skills,
like
I,
HI, high skills, but it
high
stands for
skills,
human intelligence. We've
human intelligence,
changed
yeah.
soft skills to high skills.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would add to that list, accountability and intuition. Is intuition on there?
It can be. It's all part of what leadership really has to become now, in a world of AI,
Mm,
in a world of everything else that's going on,
that's so true.
including mental health, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you, the fourth industrial revolution. since I mentioned AI, is
Yeah.
is AI, and it's technology and VR and AR, but AI is certainly, moving unbelievably fast. And they say the fifth one is about humanity. And at our firm, we try to focus on the intersection of making an impact and economic and social, and talent coming together. Um, how have you been influenced by and also capitalized on technologies and strategic partnerships, especially for the amazing work that you've been doing with First Tracks and my favorite name, Moral Health?
Yeah. So how have I capitalized on
I know.
technology? Yeah. I mean, I think AI has just made me more human. It's I have some pretty severe dyslexia. We haven't spent too much time writing emails back and forth, Mark, but you would uncover that pretty quickly. Um, and yeah, with AI, it has actually allowed me to become a writer where I've wanted to write for since as long as I can remember. Obviously, I can write, but it's like I would have had to have enough money to pay a proofreader every time I wrote because no one would take me seriously with the types of mistakes I make. And that's just not a problem anymore. I just write and then I put it in whatever ChatGPT 4.0 and say copy edit, and I don't know, typical brain. Yeah. Chef's kiss. If you're listening.
Well, that's a great point of where another place where AI is making a positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it really has. I'm a AI optimist. And I think, yeah, I think I think the question AI brings to me is we get to figure out what humans are really for. Um and I may be answering one of the questions earlier.
That's okay.
Um but one of your questions, which is, oh, what do you see coming that will make the most impact on our humanity?
Well, don't answer that one yet because that's for insights. That's later on.
Okay.
You're
We're
now you're moving faster than AI even.
waiting.
But talk about what moral health is.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Um, Moral health is iterative always, but it's this growing desire, much I think like leaders who care, and I think that's why we're so synergistic um in our thinking and energies, is this is this imagination of in businesses, you know, um why why don't we incentivize morality, right? There's no incentive to be ethical or moral, really. That's not how we don't have an economic incentivization for that. And so I think that's the basis of moral health. How can we incentivize morality? And right now it's just different stories and to make people think and reflections. I study narrative medicine at Columbia University, so I think stories are a great way to bring healing. So I think the first iteration of moral health is, um, healing through stories.
No, that makes sense. We've been talking a lot, as I mentioned, about mental health and not just fixing mental health, but how to create good mental health
Hmm.
um, before you have to fix it, right?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And this idea of what are business models that don't, especially mental health, healthcare, that don't only heal the individual but are also healing the system. So more of a virtuous cycle of good. When I don't think people on average are really focused on both.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's so important. And I talk to more and more now, even a lot of young kids that
Mm,
are um, are doing things that are helping people, uh,
yeah.
which in their own way is creating positive mental health.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Right, which ties us back to the beginning of our conversation. Yeah, this idea of being in community with each other in the land and how important that is. Doing good. to our soul, our mind, our body, our spirit.
And then you know what happens is then people, if they're in a working environment like that, let's say, or even a family environment like you were talking before, and that's the way they engage in front of and with their kids, then the kids get it also,
Exactly. Yes.
or not. You have a choice, they
Or
positive, negative.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, those are the mirror neurons, right?
Now you're talking technicalities with me. Um, no, but you're right. And it's you know, a lot of times things aren't rocket science. They're a lot of common sense and and stuff. And that's why I love that moral health theme that you have. What did I want to ask you also? We talked about things are zooming right now, like we're on Zoom right now, but you know, and we work with leaders that are working on AI for good and ethics and values and you know trying to address you know key issues that are going on, and there's different resources out there like I mentioned non-flict and things like that that help. um from your experiences in the different things you've been working on, the different things you think about, because you're really creative in by virtue of what you've been doing, how can leaders who care about being responsible and ethical be positive and strong enough to consistently walk that right path, if you will? For example, remember first responders, nurses, and everything were getting burnt out, still getting burnt out, you know, all the time in things that
Yeah.
they do, and they don't have the time for really doing what they probably want to do the most and take care of the patients, the doctors, the nurses, the people. Um, how do you see how do you see leaders who really do want to care, you know, balancing all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh it's the micro is contained in the macro, right? So I think the most important thing for leaders who care to do is their own healing work. And, you have the activists and like social movement maker Grace Lee Boggs, who says so wonderfully, transform yourself, transform the world. Um, and I think it's very popular to transform the world. Um, but to do some of the hard work on transforming yourself, uh, yeah, you're joking yourself if you're thinking you can transform the world first. And yeah, there's simpatico that
It's actually brilliant. It always reminds me of Michael Jackson's song "Man in the Mirror,"
yes, exactly.
which I thought was brilliant
Yeah,
as a song, and as he was really sending a message there, big time. Uh,
yeah, yeah. That's a beautiful. That's yeah, exactly it. Um, yeah. I mean, I remember one time I told a leader that um I think they should go to therapy, and it was as if I had punched them in the face. I said it kindly. It was just like, "Yo, your anxiety is not helping the system. It's like bordering on paranoia." Yeah. So you got to do your healing work. and,
well,
and
here,
yeah, that goes back to, not replicating the harm um of our families and of these relationships, and how are we doing better? How are we creating new systems that are better from what we came from as humans?
no,
I
it's
that's our job.
yeah, yeah, it's actually beautiful to think that way. You know, here in California, if you don't have a therapist, they think something's wrong with you. So so
Yeah,
that's
that's
how it goes here. But you know, and speaking of LA, you know, we always want to leave them wanting more, so that way we can do a sequel. So we may have to do a sequel on this. But I have one more question in this part anyway. In year 2021, when a client told me about the year 2020, he said, "You know, Mark, 2020 was the year that flew by slowly." I thought it was a great line. And because
Yeah.
they people feel like COVID, the pandemic was yesterday, but also a few years back. It's a kind of a big blend type of thing. With everything that's happened, and we're already halfway into 2024 now, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
Um, yeah, I think grateful for opportunities like meeting people like you, who are making a difference, who do care about values. Um, that makes me hopeful. People, people who are doing, leaders who care, and I'm not just trying to be on brand, but um, I need, I need to see that. I need to see people doing brave things because, as you know, like going against the grain, it's daunting and it can be isolating. And as you said, with like parents and children, it's like that with peers and colleagues. We need to be seeing those examples. Um, yeah, so that's what I'm hopeful and grateful for. Yeah,
Cool. Well, listen, I'm grateful that you're another uh, leader who cares,
thank
um,
you.
and you're a great new friend also,
Yeah,
which I totally appreciate, and I'm hopeful for that reason, for those reasons too. The good things will come. So, thanks for sharing all that.
yeah, thank you.